Okay, good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, children. Welcome to another in the Ruseas Brother-Sister Foundation Learning Together series. I am your host, Dawes. Today we will be looking at English as we know it. Last week we looked at parts of speech. We looked at the different parts of speech. We looked at the different types within those parts of speech. And we ended the class by looking at types of sentences. We looked at the four main types. And this week we will be continuing, but we will be delving further into types of sentences. Now, in light of the fact that school is out, and we do know that a lot of students are home making use of this opportunity, let's dive right in. So to pick up where we left off last week, we spoke about the fact that we have declarative sentences where it's a general statement. And let me just give you an example here. For example, the boy, okay, the boy is big. That's a declarative sentence because it simply makes a statement. Then we have interrogative sentence. Oh, that big looks almost like I'm trying to draw a face there. Then we have the interrogative sentence. How are you? Now, how are you? That is asking a question. Let me just share my screen here. Hold a moment. Give me a moment. Let me share my screen so you can see actually what I'm doing here. Okay, so let's go with I am a girl. Declarative. It is just making a statement. Then we look at interrogative. How was your day? How was your day? And we know that whenever we have an interrogative sentence, it always ends with a question mark. Let me add another one. No, we just did interrogative. Exclamatory. Wow. This is great. Excuse the penmanship. This is a new toy I'm working with. Okay. And notice the first one, declarative, it ended with a full stop. Same thing we call the period. Then the second one, question, it ends with a question sign. The other one, exclamatory, we have the exclamation mark there. And the other one we looked at was imperative. Now we said that the imperative gives the command. So go outside. Oh, no. Let me erase that. Let me erase my board. This is a new toy, so it's taking some time for me to get accustomed to it. I've been practicing, but never mind, I'll get it. Okay. Okay, so many splotches along the way. Okay, so let's go back. We were doing the imperative. So we want to write a sentence that is an imperative sentence. Go outside. So if we should add now to that, we can add an exclamation mark to it, because it's like you're in the house and you're annoying me. So I say, go outside now. But if I simply say, go outside, then we could use just the full stop there, because in its simplest form, it would be just giving instructions, no emotions involved and all of that. So let's erase this and let's move on. Let's move on to other kinds of sentences. Now, when we start constructing paragraphs, it is important that we use different kinds of sentences. Yes, we have the four major types, but every other sentence that you write will fall into these four categories. So we'll start off with the simple sentence, which is called an independent clause. Independent because it stands on its own. So think about the word independent. Look at Jamaica, for example. Jamaica was colonized by the British, and the government in Britain made all the decisions concerning Jamaica until 1962, when Jamaica became independent. So when Jamaica became independent in 1962, Jamaica made all its decision for the people of the country. And we can go a little further. As a child, you're not independent, you are dependent. Think about that word because we'll be coming back to it. So a simple sentence being an independent clause, it can stand on its own. It makes complete sense on its own, because we learn also that what is a sentence? A sentence is a group of words. When combined, they express a complete thought. And that complete thought, when you speak it, when you write it, whatever you do, it will and should make sense. Now, so let's start off with the simple sentence. So the simple sentence, an independent clause. So let's look at it. Let me go back to my pen. Okay, let me go back to my pen here. Let me come further down on the page. Hold on. Think about the sentence, I want bananas. I want bananas. It expresses a complete thought. You have the subject there, I. You have the predicate there, want bananas. So it expresses a complete thought. Let's go back. Let's put it on the page and let's visualize it now. Let's go. Oh, Dawn, don't do that. Okay, guys. Yeah, I know this can be testy, but let's go back. Okay, that should be good. Let's go again, Dawn. I want bananas. And I love bananas, and we should have a period. Okay, my period should be somewhere further up there. Yeah, so I want bananas. That's a simple sentence. Now, when you have I want bananas, I like erasing and doing that. I want bananas. I want bananas, but I do not want eggs. Okay, I want bananas. I do not want eggs, or I do not want egg. Those are two simple sentences. Now, when you take two simple sentences and combine them, you should get what is called a compound sentence. Now, just like you have compound words, you would have learned that a compound word is, you get a compound word when you have two different words and you combine them to make one. Think about it in the same sense. So you have chalk board, or others call it black board, or others call it white board. Think about those words. You combine them, you get blackboard, whiteboard, chalkboard. Think about butterfly. You have butter that you put on your bread, and you have flies, that those annoying pesty things. However, when you think about a butterfly, you don't think about the butter you put on your bread or on your bagel. You don't think about that pesty insect nobody likes. It's actually something brand new. It now becomes this thing, this beautiful thing that everybody loves, because I'm sure everybody loves butterflies. So just as you take those two words and combine them and you get one word, you take two simple sentences, combine them, and you get a compound sentence. However, what do we use to combine them? How do we combine them? Conjunctions. There are coordinating conjunctions. Another name, when we want to remember coordinating conjunctions, we always think fanboys, and I'll get into that. You realize we're looking at one thing, but in looking at one thing, it's taking us into another area. It's just that you just have to keep remembering. Okay, so we're gonna look at fanboys. I know somebody out there is saying, me teacher, I know what fanboys are. Yes, fanboys are conjunctions. No, fanboys. What exactly is fanboys? Yeah, you said they're conjunctions, but fanboys. Okay, so let's get into it. You have F. What is the F for? Let's get into it. The conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions. They're called coordinating conjunctions. So let's get into it. We have the F for. We have the A. We have the A for and. We have the N for nor. So you see the fan there? Then we have the B for but. Then we have the O for or. Then we have the Y for yet, and we have the S for so. So if you look there, you see how we get the fanboys. These are conjunctions, coordinating conjunctions. Since we're looking at types of sentences, we can't just say conjunctions and leave it at that, because as we go further into the types of sentences, we will also be looking at subordinating conjunctions. So we need to remember that coordinating conjunctions, also known as fanboys, these are used when we're forming compound sentences. Okay, I'll just have that staying on the page a little longer. So we have for, we have and, we have nor, we have but, we have or, we have yet, and we have so. So we had two sentences. I want bananas. Let me write it again. Let me write it. I want bananas. I do not want eggs. Now, how do we take these two simple sentences and turn them into one sentence, just as we did with butterfly, butter and fly? Put them together, we have one word. So now, and completely different word. Now we want to put one of the fanboys in this sentence. We want to use one of the fanboys to combine these two sentences so that we get one compound sentence. And I can almost hear persons saying, yes, use this, use this. Okay. Now, we have a sentence there saying, I want this, and the other one is saying, I do not want. So it's negating something. There's something that has some negatives about it. So I want bananas for I do not want eggs. Just listening to that, you'd say, makes no sense. Okay, let's try the other one. I want bananas and you don't even need to go any further. I want bananas and I do not want eggs. Makes no sense. I want bananas, nor do I. Makes no sense. I want bananas, but I do not want. Sounds like that could work. Okay, let's continue and see. I want bananas, or I do not. No. I want bananas, yet I do not want eggs. Could work too. Let's try the other one. I want bananas, so I do not. Nah. Okay, so we sort of find two here that we could work with. I want bananas, but I do not want eggs. So you're having breakfast and mommy says, okay, here are some slices of, here, take some slices of ripe bananas, or take an egg. And you say, I want bananas, but I don't want eggs. And then you realize, makes a whole lot of sense here. Or they say, where did I go? Or you may say, I want bananas. Yes, I really want bananas. Yet I don't really like eggs, so no, I don't want any eggs, just to get the idea across. However, but would be the most suitable word here. So we have, I want bananas, and bear in mind that when you are joining two independent clauses with a conjunction, a comma always comes before the conjunction. So let's move on. So that explains one example of using fanboys to form a compound sentence. Now, let's look at and. A lot of times when persons use and, let me clear the board so I can, go. All right. So a lot of times when persons use and, they mistakenly use it thinking they're adequately using it as a compound sentence. For example, I want eggs and bananas. That is not a compound sentence. It is simply listing two things that you actually want. What would be a better statement would have been, using and would have been, I went to the store. I saw Michael. Okay, I went to the store. I saw Michael. So these two independent clauses, these two simple sentences joined with and, because when you use and, you're thinking about addition. Okay, and then let's think again. Let's go back to our first sentence. I want bananas. What if you wanted eggs? I want bananas and I want eggs. Okay, that could work. So let's look at nor. Let's look at nor, and I hope you're still seeing my screen. Let's go. Let's say David was not at school. Okay, yeah, you got the basic idea. Let me erase this and do it over. Let me erase this so you can get it clear. Yeah, because that just seemed like when I was in grade 1 and trying to write. Okay, let's start over. Okay, so we're working with nor. David was not at school. Okay, so David was not at school. Let's look at this other sentence. He was not in his room. Okay, so David was not at school. He was not in his room. Oh, Lord. Yeah, you're making sense of what I'm doing. By next month, thereabout, we'll master this thing. So David was not at school, nor was he in his room. So one of the things we would also need to do as we use the fanboys to formulate or compound sentences, we will need to look at how best we may have to drop a word or restructure that second independent clause. So David was not at school, but we're getting the same idea across, because we can't say David was not at school, nor he was not in his room. No. David was not at school, nor was he in his room. So you are giving you're passing on the information that I don't know where David is, because he was not at school, nor was he in his room. So maybe he's at the park playing football. Okay, so let me see the other one that we can look at. We looked at but. Okay, how about this one? Let's look at or. And when we use or, we're thinking choices here, right? So let's do this. Okay. You can visit me now. Okay. You can visit at Christmas. Okay. So you can visit me now. You can visit at Christmas. So right there, the fact that you're getting a choice, you can visit me now, and we want to use or you can visit at Christmas. So you can either come now or you can come at Christmas right there. Okay, so let's stop sharing a little. Okay, so we looked at or we looked. Oh, we had so left to look at, but let's just recap before we move on. We said that a simple sentence is an independent clause. Independent because it can stand on its own. And to form a compound sentence, you take two independent clause and you use one of the fanboys coordinating conjunctions, and you put these two sentences together and you get a compound sentence. And the fanboys are, can you repeat them for me? Let me hear you. Okay. So we have for, yes. We have and, nor, but, or, yes, Mm-hmm. You got it. Okay. So we have the Y and the S. Good job. All right. So let's move on. So we have compound sentences. The next thing we'll be looking at is complex sentences. Now, this is where we will be introducing our subordinating conjunctions. And with the subordinating conjunctions, you have quite a list, and it would be important that we learn as many of them as possible. I have somewhat of an acronym that I use to introduce subordinating conjunctions. It is called on a white bus. We'll get into that now. Let me share my screen once more. Okay, so let me get my eraser. Now, we say that a complex sentence is when you use a dependent clause, sorry. You have an independent clause. I haven't told you what a dependent clause is yet. So let's get into what a dependent clause is. So think about dependent. Remember when I told the story about Jamaica and England? Think about it. From 1655, when the British took over Jamaica, all the way up until 1962, England was the mama, the papa, and Jamaica was the child. So almost everything that we wanted, we had to get it from England, from Britain. We couldn't stand on our own, so we were considered dependent. We had to depend on Britain. They made our laws. They decided what money was spent on. They did basically everything. We never had a mind of our own. So in the same breath, think about a child, say 5, 6, 7 years old, being dependent. You don't have a job where you can go out there and work your own money and pay your own bills and all of that, buy your own food. So you have to depend on somebody. Now, you are dependent, just as how you are dependent on somebody to take care of your needs. You have clauses that are dependent on other clauses in order to make sense. So remember earlier we said that an independent clause stands on its own, and we also said that a sentence is a group of words when combined make complete sense. So even if you're using an independent clause and a dependent clause, when they are combined, they must make complete sense, because what we're working on forming is a sentence. Yeah, that was a whole mouthful. All right, so let's go on. Yeah, that was a whole mouthful. So we were talking about the subordinating conjunctions, and I said to you that my acronym is on a white bus. So let's see if we can get on it. Oh, okay. Let me see what's happening here. Okay. So we have O. All right, hold on. My page is non-responsive. Let me see what I'm doing wrong. By now you realize I'm actually writing on a screen. I just need to. Okay, I know. Yeah, excuse me, guys. Yeah. When you're working with new gadgets, these things happen. Yeah, I was just scratching my lip a while ago. I remember when I started teaching in the States, and my upper lip would be itching, and I go, and the students had a real big laugh. Miss Dawn, what are you doing? And I explained, my lip is itching and I'm just scratching it. So what you do that for? And I'm like, because I'm not sure if I'm the only Jamaican who does it, but that's the easiest way to scratch your lips when your hands are busy doing other things. And if it's the bottom one, you're going something like that. Yeah, don't mind my faces. Okay. Yeah, my students tell me, well, my students in Jamaica used to tell me, oh, Miss Dawes, everything you teach, you have a story for it. Yeah. If you remember the stories that I tell with my lessons, 9 times out of 10, I assure you, you will remember the lesson. So it's somewhat sort of something that I do. All right, so let's see if I can get it this time. Okay. Haha. Come down. Okay. Something is happening there. So, oh, all right. Okay, I'm getting it. I got that. So we said on a white bus because the subordinating conjunctions, each letter of on a white bus represents at least 2 or more of the subordinating conjunctions. You're going to get homework where you're going to go and find as many subordinating conjunctions as you can find, but we will be looking at a few here because what we'll be doing is actually learning how to construct complex sentences so that as we write our paragraphs, we can be more versatile in our paragraph construction, because no reader, no teacher, nor general reader wants to read something that is just the boy is at school. He has his bag. He took his bag to the lunchroom. No, those simple sentences, there's a time for simple sentences, you know, like you're writing a story and you want to build suspense and all of that. The short, simple sentences work, but in a general essay, in your general writing, So let's get on it now. So let's say, since you are here, why not have a seat? Okay, now, since you are here, why not have a seat? This, ladies and gentlemen, is a complex sentence. However, what do you notice? It also falls in what category? It falls into an interrogative sentence category. Remember, I said earlier that every sentence you can think of, any sentence you want to create, will fall into one of the 4 categories: declarative, interrogative, imperative, or exclamatory. So since, let me circle it. Since, remember I told you about on a white bus? So, sorry, bus right here, on a white bus. So the S, which is the last letter on a white bus, would represent a subordinating conjunction such as since. So since you are here, What happened since you're here? Since you're here, can that stand on its own? What happened since you're here? You couldn't just say since you're here and leave it at that. I mean, if we're having a conversation and somebody says, a friend comes over and says, am I allowed to have a seat? And you say, you shrug your shoulder, since you're here, it is understood because you're actually talking to the person, and the person would have said something that would have made your response more understandable. However, if you just say, since you're here, it makes no sense. That cannot be considered expressing a complete thought. So something has to be added to it. So since you're here, which would be, so what would that be? Would that then be dependent? Think about it. Since, what did we say about dependent again? Dependent cannot stand on its own, but independent can stand on its own. So think about it now. Since you're here, does it express a complete thought? No. Okay, right, you got it. So since you're here is dependent. Good job, good job. So think about it though. If we should take off this part here, since you are here, why not have a seat? Does that sound like it makes sense on its own? I think so, and I hope you do too, because you know you're talking to somebody. Why not have a seat? So that in and of itself, by itself, makes sense. But this part that we removed, since you're here, by itself wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. So this first part here is what we call the dependent clause. It is the child part of the sentence. It needs the mommy part of the sentence in order to make total sense. So one of the things I also need to point out, when the sentence begins with a subordinating clause. Oh, I never told you. The dependent clause here, notice we are using the subordinating conjunction. It is also called a subordinating clause. Think about subordinating, think about the word subordinate. I know some persons may not know what the word subordinate means, but those persons who would have gotten into trouble at school because they have been rude to teachers, when you get a write-up, you would get you'd maybe get a write-up for insubordination because you fail to follow the teacher's instruction because the teacher is above you, the teacher is your superior, and those persons who were in cadet or are in cadet, you would be charged for being insubordinate. Because if you're in cadet and the lance corporal or the corporal gives you an instruction and you refuse to do it, then you are disobeying somebody who is above you, somebody who has more power than you. So think about subordinating clause. It is beneath the other one. It does not have as much power as the independent clause. So let's move on. So that is one example. So when the sentence begins with a subordinating clause, or as we call it, a dependent clause, you always have a comma at the end of the subordinating clause. So since you are here, why not have a seat? That's one example. Okay, I said before that it's on a white bus. So let's just go through some of them and see how we use them. Okay, let me get my eraser. No, let me not erase that. Let me just see if I can push it over. move it over. Okay. And let's continue. So let's start with another one. So no, sorry. Once you have cleaned your room, you are free to go. All right. Once you have cleaned your room, you are free to go. I'm just sorry, this is not interactive, so I could have somebody actually telling me about this sentence, telling me what part of it is subordinate and what part is independent. And remember the rule. The subordinating clause, when it starts a sentence, there's always a comma at the end of it. And so we were saying before that the acronym on a white bus represents the subordinating conjunctions. So right here, we have O. And then we would go down the list and you have homework to find as many as you can. So here, once you have cleaned your room, what happened? We know right away that that is dependent, that is subordinate, because it doesn't express a complete thought. But think about if you're at school and you get detention and you're in that room and you have written the essay that you were supposed to write in class, or you, let's say you were supposed to write some lines, whatever the punishment is, and you're there and you're on task, and then the principal or a teacher walks by and say, you're free to go. You understand that, right? It's expressing a complete thought. Yes, so that in and of itself can stand by itself. But if mommy says to you, once you've cleaned your room, what is going to happen once I've cleaned my room? I don't know. So therefore, that part of the sentence cannot make sense on its own. It needs something. So we know now that this part here, let me underline it. This part here is dependent. All right, so that right there, we're looking at starting the sentence with the subordinating clause. But what if the subordinating clause does not start the sentence? What do we do? Look at this sentence. Can we flip this sentence? And if we flip the sentence, where would the comma go? Think about it. All right, let's flip this sentence and see what happens. So we're going to start off with you. You. So we have a big Y there. You are free to go once you have cleaned your room. You're free to go, comma, once you've cleaned your room. Do we need a comma there, or can we just say you're free to go once you've cleaned your room, and then we just have a full stop at the end? If I were to write it the other way, this is how I would write it. Let me see if I can shift this a little. Think about it. You are free to go once you have cleaned your room. See how when we turn that around, it sounds so nice and it expresses the same idea? So whenever you're writing your complex sentences, think about, would they make sense if I should turn them around? Let's go back and look at the other one. Where is it? Yeah, I hope you're still seeing my screen. The other one was, since you're here, why not have a seat? Can we flip that? Why not have a seat since you're here? I could work with that. It makes sense. And then we would realize that we still have the subordinating clause there. So if we say you're free to go, complete thought. And then the latter part, the last part of the sentence would be your subordinating clause. So you're free to go, full stop, take that out. That would be our independent clause. Once you have cleaned your room, that would be our subordinating clause, because therein lies the subordinating conjunction. One of the things we need to remember, because there is going to come a point when you're going to have to learn to identify things like a subordinating clause. And this is why it's important to know them, know the conjunctions. Just like how you know fanboys, I'm sure every individual, by the time you get to 10, 12, you know all the coordinating conjunctions. From you say fanboys, it's like you just start reeling them off. But when you think about subordinating conjunctions now, you must be able to know them so that as you write, you can say, okay, what can I do to make this paragraph not sound so flat, so dead? Maybe I need to change the types of sentences that I'm using, add a variety of sentences. Okay, so can we move on now, or do we look at another example? I think we could maybe look at one more example. Let me push this up here. So we were talking about on a white bus. Okay, let's use W. Oh, you can't see that. That's yellow. No, we don't want that. Let me choose a brighter color. And that, hold a minute, guys. My pen has gotten too big. And the color. Hold your horses. Yeah, that is somewhat my favorite go-to phrase. Hold your horses. Yeah, rein them in. Okay, so let's see if this one works. Okay, so wow. Okay, oh my God. Yeah. I know that last word, you can hardly make it out. But anyway, the idea I'm trying. While you are there, no, I think I need to redo this. While you are there, yeah. While you are there, please get me a drink. So right there. Okay, let's do this again with better penmanship this time. Let's see how we can work with the penmanship. Okay, so you are there. Please get me a juice. All right. While you're there, please get me a juice. Now, wow. In this case, we could look without anybody even telling us and see that one giveaway is we have a comma at there, because we know that the rule is once the sentence begins with a subordinating clause, a comma comes at the end of the subordinating clause. And how do we know that this is a subordinating clause? Two things. One, it does not express a complete thought. And two, it begins with a subordinating conjunction. So while you are there where doesn't express a complete thought. But if somebody says to you, even if you are just standing in the aisle in the supermarket and somebody says to you, please get me a juice, you totally understand what they're saying. So we know that that part is the independent part of the sentence. It can stand on its own. So while you are there, please get me a juice. Okay. And we were talking about flipping the sentence. So if we flip this, and remember, a sentence must always, as a child, we used to say, beat and bone, have it happen. So a sentence, any sentence at all, must begin with a capital letter and must end with a stop sign. A stop sign is either a period, the same thing we call a full stop, a question mark, or an exclamation mark. 3 stop signs. Just like when you see the red light at the intersection, it means you're to stop. Think about, even while reading and we see these things, we stop. So if we should flip this, we're going to get, please get me a juice while you're there. It is, even though the there is not specific, it is implied, it is somewhat hinted at that the person on the receiving end of the statement knows exactly where. So while you're there, please get me a juice expresses a complete thought. Okay. I hope we are learning something from all of this. Okay, so let's erase this. And we are going to move into the tricky one. And you know what the tricky one is? The compound complex sentences. Now, a lot of persons may say that it is tricky. It's not very tricky, you know. The simple fact is that once you know what an independent clause is, and once you know what a dependent clause is, you have one of one and two of the other, and you use your commas, and you ensure that whatever thoughts you are expressing, it is expressed clearly, then we shouldn't have so much problem. Okay, let me just clean my board. Yeah, so we looked at the simple sentence, and we say that the simple sentence has a single subject or a simple subject and has a predicate. So even if we're saying that, let's say we have 2 subjects in the sentence, we have Tom and Barry. Tom and Barry loves to swim. The fact that you have and there and you have 2 persons doesn't change a thing. It still is a simple sentence. All right, excuse me. And then we move on and we looked at the compound sentence. Now we say that the compound sentence it makes use of the coordinating conjunction, and it is 2 simple sentences combined by a coordinating conjunction. Now, think about it. Everybody, I believe, can write simple sentences. Everybody can write compound sentences. It takes a little more practice to write the complex sentences, but it is doable. So let's look at the compound complex sentences. A compound complex sentence has two independent clauses and one or more dependent clause. Now you see what makes this somewhat, as persons would say, hard to deal with, because it has two dependent clause or two independent clause. So let's look at one example here. Let me give you an example that jumps to mind. And we're going to use a subordinating conjunction here. Let's see how we can work this. Let us see. Did I tell you that because is also a subordinating conjunction? No, teachers will tell you, do not start your sentence with because. And I will tell my students too, do not start your sentence with because. 9 times out of 10, unless you are a competent writer, I have found that when students use because to start their sentences, the sentence that they end up writing, it does not actually sound like a complex or a complex compound sentence. It comes across as a poorly constructed compound sentence. And I am sure there are teachers who will agree with me that this in and of itself is the reason we try to dissuade our students from using that strategy. However, I will be using because to construct this sentence. So here goes. Let's go. All right. Okay, so because of his illness, Mike never ate lunch nor okay. Oh my God. You may not be able to see exactly what it is that I have written here, but let me explain it to you and give you an idea. So because of his illness, we know right off that because is a subordinating conjunction. So we know that that right there is the what? It is dependent, because remember, we said that a compound complex sentence can have as much as 2 dependent clauses or 2 independent clauses. In this sentence here, we have 1 independent clause and 2 dependent clauses. So Mike never ate his lunch nor his supper. Why? So the first part of the sentence is telling us why he never ate his lunch nor his supper. So because of his illness, Mike never ate his lunch nor had his supper. Now, nor had his supper or nor had supper, right there, we know that that is dependent. It does not make sense standing by itself. But if we should take out the middle part of the sentence, might never ate his lunch. That could stand by itself without anything else. So let's see how if we could, change this a little here. Might never ate his lunch nor his supper because of his illness. Sounds workable, but I prefer this format. I prefer this format. Okay, so we're going to be moving to another example. Okay, that's one example. Let's move on to another. So, and we're going to start off with another subordinating conjunction. We used O when we were looking at complex sentences. We used W, we used S, we just use B. Let's use although she is hungry, Mary refused the pancakes Okay, I'm sorry about that, guys. I'm missing my place on my writing utensil. And once I lift the pen off the page, then it's sort of hard for me to see exactly where I was writing on the, let me show you something here, just to give you an idea of what I'm doing. So I have this slate that I'm writing on. So I have to write on here, and then it shows on the screen. So you see, it does give me a chance to see exactly what I'm writing. But we've been doing good so far. So let's keep going. We have, let me see. Oh, we're almost out of time. But we're having fun, aren't we? Okay, one more example before we wrap up. Okay, so although Mary, oh, what did I not do? Oh, I never put back the pen. I'm still have the eraser up. Okay, so, all right, we're good to go again. So, although Mary was hungry, okay, she still seemed to have left out a word. Okay, but we're going. So although Mary was hungry, she never ate the pancakes, nor did she have the apple. Okay, so think about this now. Although Mary was hungry, we know what happened because Mary was hungry. Cannot stand on its own. And the fact that it begins with a subordinating conjunction, we know that that is a subordinating clause. And what do we know about subordinating clause? They cannot stand on their own. So although Mary was hungry, and we use the appropriate punctuation, okay, so we put that aside, she never ate the pancakes. She never ate the pancakes. So does that make sense? Can that stand on its own? She never ate the pancakes. And I hear some person saying, because she here representing Mary. So remember that we use pronouns to replace nouns. So rather than saying, although Mary was hungry, Mary never ate. Waste of time, and it takes away from good expression. So although she was hungry, although Mary was hungry, she never ate the pancakes. So she never ate the pancakes is the independent clause within the sentence. Nor did she have the apple. Nor did she have the apple. No, couldn't make sense on its own. So right here, we've just looked at two examples of compound complex sentences. So for this afternoon, we started off by doing a revision on last week's class, where we looked at parts of speech and ended with types of sentences, the 4 major types of sentences. We picked up right where we left off last week by looking at the 4 major types of sentences and looking at the fact that every other sentence you can think of will fall into one will fall into one of those 4 categories. And we looked at the simple sentence, we looked at the compound sentence, we looked at the complex sentence, and we just ended up looking at the compound complex sentences. Now, ladies and gentlemen, remember, and for the adults who may be tuned in, please remind your children, no teacher has the power to teach a child everything that he or she will ever know. Independent learning is important. Therefore, when something is taught, and if they have learned something, it is up to them to go and do additional reading, do additional research so as to reinforce what was taught or what was learned. It has been a good 1 hour. Let me see. 1 hour and 4 minutes. I must say, I had fun. I don't know about you. So let's do this again next week. And what good. Have a good evening.